welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our next lecture. This time we are focused on the AI, creativity and ethics, opportunities and threats in the digital age. I hope this topic will be very interesting for you. My name is Małgorzata Kotlińska and I'm from Lotz Film School, and I will be co-hosting this session with my colleague Goran Pavlic from
Hello.
Academy. Yeah, hello, from Academy of Dramatic Art in Zagreb. And today we try to explore how AI is changing creativity and ethics in media, and especially also in film, addressing copyrights, human rights, and of course the most important topic for us, the sustainability. And after each speaker, we will take a few questions. You can also can type them in the chat or use the raise hand, and we will coordinate it. At the end of the session, we will also open the floor for final questions and reflections. So we will have also the time for it. But before we begin, let me introduce our distinguished, and I'm very happy that you are with us, distinguished speakers. And first of all, I would like to welcome Artur Modliński.
Hi,
Welcome.
hello.
Yes, with the topic AI and copyright in creative industries. And Artur is an expert in AI, cyber communication, digital transformation at the University of Łódź. Artur leads research on human technology interaction and helps business adapt to AI. And today, Artur will explore how AI can help artists, writers, or designers, while also challenging traditional ideas of ownership and originality, which is very important according to this topic. So I'm very happy that Artur will take the floor as a first. Next, we will welcome Jacek Nagłowski. Jacek, welcome. Jacek
Hello,
will,
hello.
okay, everything is working. Jacek will take care of the topic AI and the biggest threat to individual and state sovereignty. So I think this might be a great opportunity to look at the topic in from his point of view. Jacek is a film producer, director, researcher in new media and AI. Jacek has worked on VR experience shows and festivals like Sundance and Cannes. Your latest project, AI Slideways, examines AI social impact in the creative industries. And Jacek will try to discuss the connection between AI and modern political ideologies, questioning its role in democracy and individual freedom. Very nice that you, Jacek, that you find the time to join us. And finally, we very welcome Agata Rudnicka with the topic why we need human rights in the audiovisual industry. Hello, nice to see you, Agata, with us.
Hello.
Agata is an expert in ESG, sorry, environmental, social and governance and sustainability at the University of Łódź. Agata collaborates with business to promote ethical and sustainable change. Today, Agata will explain why human rights protection are essential in the rapidly evolving media industry. Agata, nice to have you here. So let's give the first floor to our guest, Artur Modliński, who will discuss AI and copyrights in creative industries.
All right, everyone, I'm really very, very happy for having this, I would say, a short speech for you, because Małgosia has clearly outlined that we have like a very limited time for our discussion. Nevertheless, the topic that I want to present you is probably quite actual, because as Małgosia said, on a daily basis, I work in the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Cyber Communication Research. And one of the scope of our interest is how the art, what is the reception of art that is co-created by artificial intelligence, by social robots, how people perceive this kind of objects, as we may say, well, in general, how what we may say about potential threats and challenges that are linked to this kind of the development. I know that we may say in the artistic community. Nevertheless, I feel somehow uh, mm, I feel advised to give some, I would say, a short information about how we may understand this artificial intelligence in general, in I would say in very easy words. So first of all, before we will come to, I would say, the main point, to the generative artificial intelligence, I would love to focus on two things, right? So the very first thing is the supervised learning when artificial intelligence is prepared. So in other words, if we wish to the system to recognize some patterns, to show us something out of the sources that already exist, and also to make the sources intelligent, we have to feed the algorithm with data, right? So when we have the supervised learning and we wish, for instance, that artificial intelligence is differentiating between cats and dogs. So we have a lot of pictures of cats and dogs. We have to write, oh, sorry, it's in Polish, but generally, like pies is dog, as you assume, and cat is a cat, and it's called. So just when we have this kind of the differentiation, the algorithm can take a new picture and can tell us whether we have a dog or we have a cat, right? So the more pictures we provide, the higher chance that system will recognize what is at the last picture. When we have the unsupervised learning, then the algorithm is trying to find some patterns in the data, right? We don't know exactly what kind of the patterns it can be, because you may see that in the first set of the pictures with this black I would say that with this black grounds or squares, we see that once we have dog with cat mix and so on, well, system can differentiate according to the colors, according to the background, according to various things. So it is trying to identify some kind of the patterns and provide us some kind of the receipt. So when we take into account all of this, what I said, we may say that artificial intelligence is something like the possibility or the opportunity or the skill, the ability that the system, the software, is learning on data and adapt to the environment. So this is generally something what we do in business. Nevertheless, in the generative AI, so when we go to arts and, well, creativity, we should think about the generative AI. So we know that generative AI, ChatGPT, Midjourney, and many other softwares, it is able to create something, right? We know that, well, AI is writing the books. We know that it is able to make a picture. We know that it is able to make some kind of the short movie and so on. Nevertheless, we should be aware that if we want that generative AI is writing a book, we should provide the data to the system, that the system is able to write a book. So the system is not writing any book and is not providing any picture out of nothing. We have to collect the data, so we have to feed the system once again, as with dogs and with the cats. So we should give the, for instance, the books of other authors, and we should present the pictures of the artist, we should provide the movies, so the system is able to learn something, right? And once again, the more books, the more pictures, the more movies we provide, and we well feed the algorithm, the higher chance that when we write a prompt and we describe what the system should do, then the system will be able to provide something. So when we will talk about the challenges and some kind of the threats, you should keep in mind that this number of sources is essential, that the system is working correctly. So we may say that system is not able to go beyond these boundaries, right? So if we will feed the system just with the science fiction books, it will not be quite able to write, for instance, a good drama or a good comedy, because well, the comedy was not something what was I would say the original data deliver to this kind of the system. I made with my colleague Paweł Fortuna one research on the reception of this art, generally speaking, the pictures created by artificial intelligence. And generally speaking, we found that people, when they discover that something was created by artificial intelligence, generally they perceive it as worth less money than the same picture when it is created by a human, right? So we show the people the same picture, and in one group we said this is made by human, in other we said this is made by artificial intelligence. So just this information, nothing else was changed. We discovered that the overall impression was lower when they discover it was made by artificial intelligence, and of course the artistry, right? The perceived artistry was also lower, and in consequence people perceived and they were able to pay less for the same value, for the same piece of art when it was created by artificial intelligence. We made this on the pictures, never on the paintings. We didn't have a chance to make it on music. You know that artificial intelligence is creating music. We don't know what is the reception. I have seen some last research that it was reporting the same results. So when the music is created by artificial intelligence is perceived as the worst one, as value less. Nevertheless, we don't know nothing about the movies, right? So when the movie is created by artificial intelligence, we don't know now what is the reception of the people who are watching this movie, and we don't know if people are more happy to go to the cinema, for instance, to do it. In this case, we just have the algorithm, right? So we said that there was some, I would say, algorithm that created the picture based on the picture created earlier, right? Nevertheless, we have already a lot of various artists on the market, right? So we have, I would say, the usual artist, so the human, you see Frida Kahlo, right? So like the human, 100% human, right? There is no technology here. It's just a human who has some emotion, who has some experiences, and the person is creating something. Nevertheless, as you see, we have also, I would say, a new type or a new agents on the art market. Now, this guy in the middle is Neil Harbisson, and Neil Harbisson is perceived as the cyborg. So this antenna that you see on his head is supporting him in changing some stimuli now that he's taking from the environment, and he's changing the stimuli to paint or to create music, right? So we said now that Neil is the first cyborg, and we wanted also to check how people perceive the work made by this kind of the agent like Neil. And on the last picture, you see a robot, right? This is a humanoid robot, Aida, and Aida has a body, as you see on the picture, and Aida is creating the paintings, right? So she's able to paint and create some piece of art. And when we ask for, well, quite the same thing. So we wanted to see how people perceive I would say, this kind of the piece of art created by various agents. You see that when people discover that something was created by human, it is valued as, I would say, as the best one, right? So they were able to pay the highest amount of money for the piece of art created by human. Compare, of course, to the humanoid robot and to the cyborg. So also people are somehow discriminating the people or the agent like Neil Harbison because they believe that somehow the technology is faking this kind of the, I would say, of the creation. So even if the people knew that, we have the different agent, but we have the same picture, just when they discovered that it was not made by 100% human, they valued this piece of art as, I would say, as something worse. So for sure, we have here some kind of the, I would say, a cue that tell us that when some piece of art is created by human, 100% human, it is perceived, and this is estimated more by the art consumers or people who are art recipient, that than when the product, when the object, piece of art is created by some artificial system. And of course, with this kind of the creation, we have a set of challenges and threats. We do not have probably a time that I show you the picture, but or the movie, but I really recommend that you can check this kind of the song that was recorded by Randy Travis. It is called "Where That Came From," and it is very interesting, I would say, example of how artificial intelligence is used, because Randy Travis had a stroke. And unfortunately, he is not able to sing and he is not able to play, but he's still able to write the songs. And Randy Travis is quite popular, but unfortunately, he's not able to create anything when it comes to this to the voice and to playing something. And so he agreed that artificial intelligence, the algorithm, will learn his voice and will in fact sing a song that was written by Travis after he suffered from stroke. So you can check, of course, in your free time this kind of the music, because even Travis in one of the interviews said that he was really very happy because he has a lot of emotion that he wanted to share with the fans, but because of the illness he was not able to do it. And he was very, very happy with the outcome of this kind of the experiment. And also the fans of Travis supported, and they were very happy that after some piece of time they were able to listen to the new song of Travis. So this is, I would say, something quite nice, because here we have an artist agreed to cooperate with artificial intelligence, and of course he made the money on the song, right? So this song was recorded, it was on the CD, it was able to buy this on Spotify, so it helped him to generate the money, and it, of course, I would say we didn't have any problem with the copyrights. Another good example is, of course, using this kind of the system in some kind of the restoration, right? So the system is able automatically to, I would say, change colors, to change the qualities, if of course if we agree, because this is not the autonomous system. And here on the picture you can see one of the, I would say, the example of how this kind of the system based of artificial intelligence are automatically helping to change the quality of the piece of art. And of course, it may speed up the process of, I would say, restoration of some kind of the work from the past. And this is probably very close to the also to the movies industry. Um, and we have a lot of the examples. I don't know if you are aware, but you can of course check some of the movies that were, I would say, restored somehow, with artificial intelligence. And for instance, the Casablanca also it is one of the example that nowadays was, I would say, supported with this artificial system, especially when it comes to the some kind of the noise reduction. So a lot of problems that, well, the people, the cameraman, people who were preparing the movie, unfortunately, because of the technological constraint, they were not able to avoid when making the movie. Maybe far away from the, I would say, the movie industry, but quite close to the art and quite close to the heritage studies, we have, well, the systems, they're helping us to also restore some ancient, maybe not piece of art, but some kind of the materials. And here, a very good example is also like the Dead Sea Scrolls. They, like people, the researchers, they really had a big problem to decode what was written on the tables, and with the AI systems, they were able to understand what was the purpose of preparing this kind of the manuscript. So they believe that it can be also quite helpful to understand what happens in ancient Egypt, in Greece, and also in other parts of the world when we still have a problem to understand some kind of the work. Also, a very positive element of using artificial intelligence in this kind, I would say, of artistic field, is using this kind of the system as the copyright recognition or the protection tool. Yeah, so we have the system that is able to learn, I would say, a very specific style of some artist. And when we use this kind of the applications, or when we use this kind of the software, we are able to differentiate if something is really like original or not original, or how many percent we have that some picture, for instance, or some music was created by the artist. Now, also when it comes to the fake system, right? So it is able to recognize if Freddie Mercury is singing some song, or Michael Jackson is singing some song, yeah, that was stored somewhere, or it was, for instance, created by artificial systems. So it is differentiating between artificial and original systems I would say, very, very well. But here some problem starts, right? Because I told you that to create something, to create a movie, to create a book, we have to use the work of other artists, right? And here the problem begins. Because in fact, we don't know if we use ChatGPT or if we use Midjourney and we create something, we don't know in fact who is the owner of the copyright, right? So if the book written by artificial intelligence and we ask artificial intelligence to write a book or prepare a movie, we do not have 100% sure who is the owner, right? So we who created a prompt, the developer, I mean the ChatGPT, is the owner, or maybe the people who deliver the data to create something, they are the owners of the copyrights. And we have a lot of the problems, a lot of issues in the legal debates, how we can perceive this kind of the work and what we can do with this, right? So I believe that this will be one of the main challenge when it comes to the I would say artistic world and the development in the upcoming years. We have, of course, a very huge debate when it comes to the, I would say, the copyrights of the artists who deliver their work to fit the system. And we had recently such writers as Margaret Atwood, as Ishiguro, as Kotsi, who said that they are against the system who is using their books to create a new book, because they are not remunerated for this kind of the work, right? So someone is taking the books of these people, and he or she is just asking the system to create something new. So this is really a huge problem, and we, once again, we don't know what to do with this kind of the situation. We don't know, for instance, what kind of the data are used, or is used when something is prepared. And for this reason, it is, well, a huge call for, I would say, higher transparency when it comes to what kind of the data we use, what we do with people who deliver the data to feed the system, and generally speaking, what kind of the output we offer to the audience based on this kind of work. We have also more problems with the artists who are already dead, and you know that there is already a chance to revive that artist. Here you see some examples with Audrey Hepburn and with Whitney Houston. You know that Whitney Houston is a hologram who is making a concert around the United States, around Europe, and we have more and more artists who are revived in this way. You can go to the concert, you can buy a ticket, and well, each time you see a little bit different Whitney Houston, for instance, right? Because it's not static, it differs in time. And we don't know, in fact, who should receive the money for this kind of the concert, right? Is it a family of Whitney Houston? Is the producers who are supporting Whitney Houston's? Well, the people who wrote the song for Whitney Houston, or who, right? So it's really a big problem. The same is with artists, right? With Audrey Hepburn, this is quite an old advertising from the past, where we had, I would say, the revive Audrey Hepburn. And once again, we don't know, right? We just take some kind of the image and we can do whatever we wish with this image. And we don't know how to treat a situation when an artist is revived. And also, if, for instance, people who are alive, how we can use this kind of the image when we are, for example, speaking about making some movie or making some kind of the music clips. So to sum up, because I see that step by step I'm approaching to the, I would say, to the end line of my presentation, but I believe that we will have quite an interesting discussion. Of course, one of the highest problem that I identify is this authorship and how we can protect the artist from using their image, for using their, I would say, the style, artistic style, from using their work as a data, so we do not lose, I would say, the human identity of art. Another problem is, of course, how we can train the system, what kind of the data we can use and how we can feed the algorithm, and what we can do so we can, well, prove this originality, and how the artist can compete with the system who are making everything quite faster, right? And of course, this what is also quite a big question, but probably not for just partially for us, but for the lawyers. So how we can support the artist who, well, deliver this kind of the data, so a new piece of art can appear. And once again, if something is created by artificial system, artificial intelligence, is it still a piece of art? Or maybe this is a product of culture, or just a product, just the object, because we don't know. In my qualitative studies, when I ask the people if this is a piece of art, like people said, no, this is not piece of art, because to create piece of art, you should have a spirit, or you should have some kind of the soul. But machine does not have a soul. And just when human, 100% human agent creates something, it is a piece of art because it offers the soul, the experience, the emotions. So once again, the question is how we can differentiate, how we can communicate that something was created by artificial systems, and what we can do as the community to protect our intellectual property and our creativity. I believe that we will have a chance to discuss a little bit more on the topic. Nevertheless, if you will, something will, appear in your mind after our meeting, you can find me on LinkedIn and I will help you, and I will answer with pleasure if I will know the answer, of course. So thank you very much, and I am open for any question, and I hope that I will be able to answer them.
The question I have is, in your studies also, have you tried, because if we treat it as a binary distinction between this is AI made or this is human made, then this dilemma is kind of simpler, because but the thing is, and I'm saying it as a creator who does a lot of stuff for several years already with AI systems, that if something is to be truly done, it's never one step process. And actually in the process, it's never the AI that does something, but it's rather co-creation, right? So, and it's a multi-step process that leads to the final result of interaction between me or any other creator and the system as it is. And did you try to already discuss it and check if that changes the perception, if there is more nuance in that, in that approach to what is created by whom and or by what, and how this situation looks like if we, if we start to talk about the real world examples, right?
Yeah, thank you, Jacek. We didn't make the experiment, I would say, directly as you described. We tried to talk to the people, and first of all, the artificial intelligence, once again, it appears as something bizarre, as something strange. So just when people hear that there is the artificial intelligence, they suddenly discover that that's something not nice. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's some fake, or it doesn't work. They don't know. They really don't know what AI is, right? They believe it's very funny because when I go to the managers, not to the artistic people, but to the managers in the companies, and when I ask what AI is, it appears frequently that they start talking about the Terminator, right? So here I would say the movies and the science fiction industry is, I would say, a huge background for this kind of the people. We don't know. We perceive. We are not able to differentiate when we have the acceptable, I would say, amount of AI in the process. So this is really a big question, and I think it is really worth checking. If we show the same, I would say, procedure that something is created, and we say that author was talking to ChatGPT or was inspired with some kind of the work, but he used his own hand or her own hand, right? And the AI was just a supportive tool. We can absolutely check how it affects the value and the perception. So, well, let's try.
If I could add one anecdote actually, but it's a social anecdote with regards to that. It is lately the latest version of NVIDIA graphic cards has the system that it produces frames that are not able to be calculated by the graphic card, and it is produced by artificial intelligence because it's faster. So actually you can have like, I don't know, 20 frames per second what is card capable of in a particular scenario and in particular settings in game, and another 80% is produced by AI on the basis of these 20 frames, right? So it's filled in, and it is pretty funny because there was a huge backlash from the gaming community, and for the same reason that these are fake frames. So which is completely technical process. So even the technical process, because it was AI generated, it was fake instead of, it was perceived as fake instead of the real calculation that is, based on the algorithm. So yeah, so I suppose these presuppositions and prejudice with regards to AI is very deep. Even if in that conditions you have that kind of a backlash and that kind of a social reaction.
It's interesting because it suggests that we like to play with the artificial intelligence, but not when artificial intelligence is creating, I would say, the environment. So we absolutely we find a new scope of where this artificial agent can appear. Very, very interesting. I just when you told Jacek about this, I just some anecdote and some story on my head appeared. I promise it's my last sentence. Is that people are the layman's, of course, and laywoman, they are not able to differentiate between this, I would say, object of art that are created by human or AI. So when some researcher, they asked them to differentiate which picture was created by AI, they were not able to guess, right? So it was almost 50-50. So they just don't like it when they discover it is made by AI.
Well,
Hey, can I still comment like a bit? And I was away for a while, so I don't know if this was somehow covered, but I think like when it comes to art in general, I think the authorship is definitely like to me the biggest thing that actually increases the value. So I mean, the sunflowers by Van Gogh are not, or they are basically so valuable because they were done by Van Gogh. And I mean, the Picasso painting are valuable because they were done by Picasso. And I partially think that, or my take on this situation is that it might be that AI kind of has a road on its own. And actually the human-made things start to gain value again. So I mean, and I've been kind of thinking like, I don't know if you have these young people who are photographing on film again. You know, it's like kind of an analogical thing. It can't be, you know, I mean, they don't look that amazing. The pictures, they look like photos used to look like, but I think that's maybe part of the thing, that it's actually something not done by computers. So I think that or my take on the thing is that this aesthetics could actually go more into these like traditional medium. So maybe like you know, paintings, people would start to buy like new oil paintings again or something like, and actually the fact that it is human made could actually rise again, like and it's not being manipulated in any way. So I kind of think that it could be just kind of this crossroad where kind of this technological artwork goes this way, and then there's like, I don't know, like, and I mean, like, I know people who have started to do aquarels, so watercolor painting. So it could be kind of this going back to basics, or going back to these, because it's definitely something that you can't sort of produce. And but hey, I think I also really much love them, that song, that where did that came from, you know, because I think it's also a very fresh look on like on this artistry and actually staying in the business. So I think that was a quite amazing example of AI being used in a very humane way.
I may just agree with you absolutely that I think that now the art and really like the object, the service, whatever we talk about art or not, those ones that are created will be created by human. They become the premium the premium products, right? So I really also I really think that we are approaching a moment where the piece of art made by human will be more appreciated because of being made by human, by hands, by some kind of experience of people.
Jacek, the last sentence, but please the last, because
Okay.
so you know.
Just a bit of objection
Okay.
to what Artur said. From my perspective, is that I'm afraid that if we look at the art in the same terms as any other market or any other industry, let's say, then I don't think we are on a good position for two reasons. Even if we say that there will be a revalorization of human art, it's gonna be the same path as was in digital photography and as it was with translators and AI, which means all the middle is cut out of the business, the top stays on and performs very well, because this is where name and authorship really matters. And all the bottom, which is precariation of work, also performs very well, which is actually exploitative work. So in these terms, even if some work made by hand is going to be revalued, the main way people operate on the market is going to be very, impacted in a bad way. But this is only part of the story, because another part of the story is that maybe the problem is that we treat generally art the same way as any other kind of part of the market or a business. And as long as we start productize and commodify art and culture, then we hit this particular problem. And because art as a product or culture as a product is going to be replaced, because it's going to be cheaper, it's going to be better made, and so on by AI. On the other hand, if we start, and this is the matter of authorship, if we start to approach art and culture as a matter of communication and not consumption and productization, then there is a huge space to save people in it, and because to communicate, you have to have someone to communicate with. So that someone stuff, the authorship and the person behind starts to be important again. So very much depends on the narrative, on the art and culture generally that we have. If we have the narration on the art and culture that it is just part of the economy and yet another market and yet another industry, then I think that in relation to AI we are fucked. But if we start to approach it as a culture, as a place of interaction, meaning making, and culture making, actually, then I think that we can be saved.
Okay. Jack, the floor is yours.
I already took it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
At the end, we will have some time to discuss more, but thank you, Artur, once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, I will share my screen. Okay, before I will, I have to make some, introduction. First thing is that I deal with AI for 5 years already, and I deal with it in theoretical terms, and in practical terms. I'm making stuff with different systems, large language models, image generating models, video, music, any kind. So I'm pretty deep in it, and I'm saying that because what you are going to hear will sound as if I was a huge opponent of AI. So I'm saying that I'm doing stuff with AI, so I'm not, but the lens that I'm going to propose here is very anti-AI in a way, because it's important for me to show the lens that I believe is not, and because we have theoretically only 10 minutes, so it's important for me to show the lens that I believe is not often seen, and I also believe that it might have the biggest impact socially and also in culture, but socially mainly, when we start to look at AI from this perspective. And maybe that's the only way we can at least try to do something to change the course of events, if we know that. This is the first thing. Second thing is, if you haven't heard about neo-reactionary movement in United States, and the way they are operating, which I'm going to tell about a bit, but I suppose you won't believe me. And I suppose that after this presentation, you will think that I'm talking a lot of bullshit and like complete science fiction. But I also believe that next time when you will have mentioned all these people that I'm going to mention, or or this movement, then maybe you will also start to dig into it and see that it is a real issue. Actually, if we had time later on, I can show some clips from these people I'm going to talk about to present their stances, which are not widely popular, even if they are in a public space. So this is the second thing that I wanted to say. And the third one is the last one as an introduction is it will seem completely, and it is completely political in a way, but I think that at the end you will see why I'm starting from this angle and where it is heading. And I'm starting from current US administration, because this is the this something that really changes the game in relation to AI and the lens we should eventually look at it. And you may be familiar with the narrative that current administration, Donald Trump administration, is actually mainly a MAGA movement, which is populist movement, America first, you know, bringing all the industry to United States, making America strong, and so on and so on. I call it here red MAGA, and I will make it clear why that distinction. And this is indeed a popular movement. But the thing is that the current administration is combined of three different factions, not only actual red MAGA, but also Christian fundamentalists, which are actually behind those people is something that is called the Heritage Foundation. And the Heritage Foundation is actually and they are the authors of the Project 2025 that you maybe have heard about, which is the kind of a playbook of how Trump should govern when he gets into the office. The source of their power is that during the last 5 years, they managed to train 25,000 people in their schools around the United States to be, and they officially trained it for that, to be loyalists and to be officers in the public administration. So they have an army of officers, I mean, of office workers behind them, which can fulfill all those that will be replaced or removed from the actual government. And this is something that is still pretty known and well known, but even more obscure part is the neo-reactionary part of it, also called dark MAGA. That's why it's different from red MAGA, or AKA dark enlightenment. And this is political and ideological movement that I would like to focus on, because this one seems to be the most dangerous for me, and at the same time probably has the most power in the current administration. But we will see. In fact, there is a conflict, and there is between Christian fundamentalists and dark MAGA, or the dark enlightenment movement, and you can see glimpses of this conflict, for example, between clashes between Marco Rubio and Elon Musk, because this is precisely, they are representing in the center of power, they are representing these two factions. But the crucial thing is, okay, so who is this? Who is this neo-reactionaries? And the first person that you probably should know about is Curtis Yarvin. And Curtis Yarvin is the guy who is assumed to be an intellectual. He produced a lot of blogs and several books as well. And he has a number of concepts I will describe a bit, which are literally anti-liberal, anti-democratic, and the main idea of his is that this is the transition period from the nation states to corporate states. And this is the goal that they want to, that he expressed, that should be that we need a new operating system for the state, because old one, which is democracy and liberal democracy, is already non-functioning and inefficient, and we need a new kind of operating system for a state. Curtis Yarvin draws heavily from another guy, from a British philosopher, Nick Land. And Nick Land, on the other hand, starts to he comes from the Deleuze and Guattari's ideas, but actually he inverts it. And so the relation between Nick Land and Deleuze and Guattari is more or less as the relation between Marx and Hegel. So it's like inverting, his idea and applying it as actually as a kind of ideology also. And if to keep this line of comparison, Curtis Yarvin is someone like Lenin to Marx. It's actually a person who is going to, provide implementation of Land's ideas in practical terms. And the most openly claiming his association or affiliation to Yarvin person is the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, who refers to his ideas openly, who actually in several interviews already officially said that he is very inspired by Curtis Yarvin works and so on and so on. Another person who is very heavily inspired by Yarvin and also openly claims that is Elon Musk. Another person is Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel is a guy who is formerly, and we will get to that, formerly chief of PayPal. Now he's chief of one of the biggest military companies that are getting a lot of grants from United States, which are actually data companies and digital companies. And he has several other issues. Another one is Mark Andreessen. You can know him from the Andreessen Horowitz hedge fund, one of the biggest hedge funds in United States. Another person affiliated to that is David O. Sachs, which is the officially named by Trump cryptocurrency and AI Tsar in White House, which means that he's an official advisor of in the White House in cases of AI and cryptocurrencies. And there are two other people, Michael Kratchens, who is, there is a new position in UAS, which is Chief Technological Officer, and he is the Chief Technological Officer of United States, and he has officially that position. And Michael Anton, who is a State Department Director of Policy Planning, who is a bit more related to Project 2025, but also deeply related to, and we go back here again, to Peter Thiel. And all these people, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, David Sachs, they are parts of something that was long time ago called PayPal Mafia. This is official name. It's not just to describe them this way. They even probably sometimes call them this way. This is a group of people that were involved in creating initially PayPal, who made a lot of money through it. Many of them comes from South Africa. And they came to US, they worked together, and they, out of the money they earned on PayPal, they started many other businesses. All the businesses of Elon Musk, all the businesses of Peter Thiel, including OpenAI that was supported by Thiel, including Palantir, that military company, and so on and so on. They are funded by this group of people who are all linked to Curtis Yarvin and openly declare their affiliation to that ideology. But what this ideology says. So first thing, is that they officially state that the future system is not a nation state, but corporate states, or actually network states, which are small states, actually kind of cities, even, which are governed by corporations and are governed by particular CEOs who play the role of kings. And they are calling themselves also new monarchists. And this is completely feudal system, and they also claim it is feudal. So it's not that this is, an adjective that you throw at them, oh, this is feudal. No, they say that this is the feudal system. And you might have heard about Yanis Varoufakis, who is a leftist thinker, former minister of Greece, minister of finance of Greece, who wrote a book, Techno-Feudalism, and he's promoting this term to describe what is happening right now. So actually, they've been using this term, but as a positive description, before Varoufakis came with his idea to call it techno-feudalism. So this is where they are heading with it. And in this context, if you look about these stupid claims about Gaza, that they are going to make a kurort there by Trump, if you look at the deal they want to make with Ukraine, which actually is going to be about the exploitation of rare earths and other minerals. If you look at this through this lens in their approach to Greenland, or to the declaration of Donald Trump that they want to make, to build from scratch completely new so-called free cities in US, then it all makes sense. Because you need that concept of nation states to make sense of these moves. And this is also why they have very good relationship with United Emirates of Arab, because this is also a kind of structure that is similar to that. And this is also what Javier Milei is trying to implement in Argentina. So this is much bigger than just a fringe of stupid people in US. So this is one thing. Another thing is that they are openly monarchists, and they call it, sometimes they call it as a figure of king, but mostly they prefer it to compare it to a CEO function of a state. And this is openly authoritarian, like openly. It's not, again, whatever I'm saying that might look like overstatement, this is what they described about themselves. It's not that an allegation. And you can see it also from one of the executive orders of Trump was precisely about that only him and the general prosecutor are able to determine what is the law in the United States. So this grab of power of on the executive branch is precisely implementation of these ideas. It is openly anti-democratic. It is anti-egalitarian. It is completely elitarian. The claim behind it is that people who made billions and make themselves so successful deserve, because they have proven their higher ground, they deserve to play the role of leaders and set out rules for all the others. In fact, and I'm again using that descriptively, not evaluatively, this is openly fascist system. Openly fascist, not in comparison to Nazism and Hitlerism, but to Italian fascism, with only one change, that it is not nation state that is fascistic, as it was in case of Italian fascism, but this is the corporate state and corporation that has that completely fascistic authoritarian structure where people are, where the elites are allowed to exploit people on the down. And we can see it in the description of dismantling of social security, the idea of fully privatized state, which we are going. It is enabled by crypto-based, and this is the idea to make it completely cryptocurrency-based. Yarvin openly had this idea of rage, which is a short from retire all government employees. And of course, this is precisely what Doge is, like, literally. It is implementation of this idea.
Sorry,
Also,
Jacek,
Yarvin described, yeah?
Sorry, because I raised the hand because you took the very wide topic, and I believe that it needs to have the space to, you know, to think, to discuss, and we don't have so much time to. I think that we might focus more, maybe, if you agree, for this creative industry to move on, because I think that we will not have able to,
I think that
you know,
I think that I need maybe 3 to 4 minutes maximum to land it all, because you will see why I need it, okay? And I will land it all on the subject that I believe is related to everything that we talk about here. He made this idea of shadow president, who is performed actually by Elon Musk, and the project 2025 is really highly overlapping with Yarvin's idea of butterfly revolution, and I will not develop it for the reasons of time. The main reason is inefficiency and the requirement for new operating system of states to make it more efficient, and because what is now is not rational, and what they claim is the rational system of governance. And here we go to the subject that we talk about, which is AI. Because I said at the beginning that this is about the convergence of these two that really draws completely different light on what happens with AI right now. And probably you have heard about the Project Stargate announced by Donald Trump something like 3 weeks ago, where there were 3 people in the Oval Office, and the Project Stargate was announced, which was Sam Altman from OpenAI, which was Ellison from Oracle, and a guy from SoftBank from Japan, which is actually the biggest investment in US history in anything. In comparison, it is $500 billion investment in AI infrastructure to make, of course, US the dominant position in AI race, but you have to notice that it is not in the infrastructure as is, but it is the infrastructure that's going to be used by really only several companies, OpenAI mainly, as the leader of that, project. And in comparison, the space station costed $2.8 billion, and we have 500 in here. So it's just to compare. But you have a comparison with X, which is Elon Musk's idea, and his idea is to make X as an everything app, and the idea of everything app is actually WeChat from China, which is the application that serves every purpose and actually has the same level of control over citizens as WeChat in China has. And of course, you have any other players on the market, which were all present in the inauguration of Donald Trump a month and a half ago. And you have clear engagement in cryptocurrency sphere, which Trump emitting Trump coin, and we have Melania coin. But the most important stuff, which for many economists is not understandable from the regular positions is that they decided that the national strategic reserve will be also kept in Bitcoin, which is actually already a move towards that replacing of dollar with cryptocurrencies. What stems from that? And here we go to the core of it. They are openly, because of these ideas, they are openly stating full invigilation of every citizen as a goal they want to achieve. And I have a clip that I can show from Ellison, who says it openly on the press conference. That invigilation of any citizen 24/7, as well as any policeman and so on, will make this country safe. We have extreme applications of artificial intelligence into military sector, and we have replacing of administrative role by AI systems, which actually already started to happen with Doge activities in United States. So this is how these systems are going to be used primary. So, and we have, of course, all the other players that in different sectors play their role. And to not say too much about where all these applications of artificial intelligence are used in any of these branches, I'm just listing it here. But actually, what I'm heading with all this is that whatever we say about cultural impact of AI into creativity, into audiovisual systems, into the way how we deal socially with this impact, and you know, Małgosia, that I'm talking about it a lot for a long time, but what happens right now, due to the direction current administration has taken, I believe is the most dangerous direction you can imagine can be taken with AI. And yeah, as I said at the beginning, I truly believe that having that lens, interacting with these systems and using OpenAI, using Google, using X, please keep in mind what is right now probably behind it. Of course, the power battle is not ended. We will see where it ends, but there is definitely a group of people that deploys all these systems precisely and openly for these purposes that are presented here for ideological reasons. So this is what I wanted to land with this presentation, because yeah, right now for me, it's overwhelms all the other discussions about AI, because it's about literally individual sovereignty, individual freedom, and freedom of states. And this is the game that is played. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you a lot, Jacek. Unfortunately, we don't have time now for the immediate questions. Maybe we'll have later. So I would give floor to Agata and welcome her to the presentation.
Thank you for inviting me for this meeting. My name is Agata Rudnicka. I work at the Faculty of Management, but I also an associate expert of Polish Institute for Human Rights and Business. This is the organization which deals with human rights in business in a very broad context, and one of them is, of course, audiovisual industry. Why it is so important to discuss human rights in such specific business? Because there are a lot of reasons, but I'm going to indicate 3 of them. The first is awareness building. Audiovisual industry is very responsible for what we do see and how do we perceive the reality we are living in. Arthur was mentioning about the AI and the authorship right, and I think that the problem is much more broader, because we need to know what the patterns of behavior, what social patterns are okay for the society and what aren't. And audiovisual project has a very broad space for the discussion, but also to educate about it. Then we have the changing social attitudes. I love the planet placement, for example, in audiovisual, because it teaches how to behave. And they do not use the education, like the formal education, and they can spread in movies and series a lot of different environmental and green attitudes toward the environment. And this is something that is very welcome, but we also have to think about the dark side of audiovisual institutions as well. So there are a lot of different, let's say, motives that we can analyze, that we can take into consideration when start the adventure with human rights in business. The one is that every person has the dignity, so we as a business are responsible for respect the human rights, and even if the states they do not provide enough protection, our obligation is to assure that everybody who works, who is the addressee of the content that we are producing, must be treated equally, which is not so easy, which is not so obvious, especially if we have a lot of different impacts, including the cancel culture that we are living in. The second is the business responsibility. So by our decisions, we do have the impact, and sometimes the impact is negative. We, of course, are very happy when we can generate positive impact, but the reality is like that each business has social and environmental negative impacts, which resulted in a lot of different problems, starting from climate change issues and finishing for forced labor or child labor in our value chains. So this is why we shed the light on human rights through the different lenses, and one of them are stakeholders. There are a lot of different stakeholders in audiovisual industry. I am just indicating exemplary four which are very essential for human rights. The one are employees, the second is the audience that I has already indicated in the previous slides. There are also suppliers and communities as the whole. Employees has the rights, the employer right, and there are a lot of cases when the employees' rights are abuses. Like the right to living wage, the right to relax, the right to have the good working conditions, the right to safe and healthy working conditions, and so on. And of course, in audiovisual industry, there are different stages, and unfortunately, on each of them, a lot of different abuses may appear. Audience, as I say, you have a huge impact on audience in a positive and negative way. You can create unethical patterns of behavior if the production are full of unpleasant behaviors that are very welcomed by people. There are also a lot of different groups of audience, like the small children, which are or may be affected by the production and by the content that you are presenting. And suppliers, quite different element of audiovisual industry. When you think about the new production, you need to make a lot of different decisions, and all of them are related to suppliers, the relations with suppliers, the way that you are building them, just to assure that the production will be successful, and of course it will be economically efficient. And suppliers, as a very important stakeholder, may affect the success of the final product. And also it's very important when discussing social and environmental impacts. And the last but not least, the communities. If you have the production, you need some space, you need to move physically, and it generate a lot of different impacts for local communities, especially if you are working with indigenous people, or if you are working on sensitive communities which are very far from the big cities and the rush that we are living in. And when you appear on a small community, you can affect the community rights. So those are the stakeholders, and as you can see, we have two different aspects of human rights. There are internal and external. The internal may cover anti-discrimination, so the processes that are happening to prevent discrimination and mobbing in internal relations among employees and producers and directors, people who are in charge, who have the power to manage the people. There is also the challenge with working conditions, how to compromise different interests and to assure that everybody is taken for their rights. Gender equality, we see that there is still a gender imbalance in audiovisual industry. So how to make gender is not an issue, because gender equality is about making the gender not an issue. And this is the challenge for human rights as well. And of course, taking those aspects all together, we can think about inclusive environment, how to assure that people feel the sense of belonging there, because we are all very different. So what to do to assure that we are all on the same page in our professional relations. And the ethical challenges in content creation, as I mentioned, and a lot was told about AI and deepfakes. So it is also the issue of human rights for and the risk of biases, different kind of biases and stereotypes that can evolve when AI is used in unconscious way or irresponsible way. We have also reality TV ethics. As I said at the beginning, you have a powerful impact. You have the huge way to impact people in a positive and negative ways, and creating that social patterns is something that you have to take into consideration. And of course, the freedom of expression and the cancel culture, it's something that needs to be discussed very deeply, because balancing between the freedom of expression and social responsibility is something that is very challenging, and it's not so easy to answer where is the limit and how we should behave. So, but practices, there are a lot of different data. I just show some exemplary that we still have the problems, as I told before, and I'm just going to skip for the solutions because I know that we are out of time. So just to say that there are a lot of different challenges, as in each industry. There are no industry free from human rights abusements and human rights violations. The issue is how do we deal with them, and for audiovisual industry, as more and more activities, ethical codes, industry guidelines, and advertising standards. This is the starting point, especially for content creation. So we can follow some rules like ethical codes to know how to behave and to know where are the limits that I have mentioned before. There are are also industry guidelines which covers not only the internal aspects of audiovisual production, but also covers the checkpoints or checklist, what kind of behavior is welcomed and how to protect human rights in different stages of audiovisual project. And of course, advertising standards. People are getting more and more sensitive, especially for greenwashing, social washing, and different types of fake information, that may be misunderstood. So people who are working in audiovisual must take into consideration that we are moment that fact-checking will be crucial and fundamental for our activities. So advertising standards may be in the line with what do we expect as an audience from you, and you can take it into consideration, like for example, green criteria for advertising to avoid greenwashing. And maybe I will skip it, but because there are no time, but I just would like to tell you just to summarize that there are different stages, and each stages has different risks that may be related to human rights. So when you prepare the new production, when you are the project manager, a producer, a coordinator, film coordinator, please take into consideration some elements like prepare risk assessment to check what is the location, how do you select supplier, how are you going to verify them, and of course don't forget about the team composition, which is also very important to assure that we are open on diversity and inclusivity. Then you have the next stage, implementation, and to assure that there are no human rights abusements, please take care about working conditions, about assuring anti-discriminatory procedures, and to be ready for the channel of communication to report about unpleasant and improper behaviors if appear. Then post-production, and still this is the moment of your decision. You can check it from human rights side about content, about the stereotyping prevention, and of course to check if there is the enough representation, check if we show the life how it is, or if we are creating something which is not real and may cause a lot of different unpleasant situations and unpleasant and bad social patterns. And of course, distribution and accessibility for the distribution is also very important. How are you advertise, if it is the responsible marketing, and how are you assess the age ratings, because this is the very specific group of stakeholders like children and young people who are very sensitive of the content that you are generating as an audiovisual industry. Okay, so just to the end, it depends on you. How would you behave? How would you shape the future? What kind of steps are you going to take? What kind of risks are you going to identify? Everything is in your hands, and I wish you to be a change you want to see in the world, because everybody can start from ourselves. Thank you for this possibility for sharing. Sorry if I was in a rush, but I was aware about the time limitation. Thank you.
Thank you, Agata, so much for being concise and precise. It was a great presentation. We have a direct question from Marta. Marta, can you repeat it now loud, actually, because it's in a...
Because the audiovisual sector and creative sector are quite specific. There is a lot of freelancers, 80 and 98, 99 even of freelancer in the creative sector are accounted. So we have a lot of nano enterprise, so solitaire artists dealing with the with the structure and how it impacts the human rights. Yes, because we do not have a big companies, we do not have any codes, ethics consulted in the companies, any way to to introduce it on the level of the organization, as we are the only one, and we are really entering different kind of contract, and we are suppliers for different people, and how this fact impacts the human rights implementation, because I believe it's going out to the to the box and rules we are establishing. Yes. Because with the ESG, we have a reporting for the big companies, yes, and when we have an ecosystem of the nano entrepreneurs, the freelancers, we are escaping the statistics.
Yes, but we have the impact, and if you are from Polish audience, I may share some materials with you, because we do know that even freelancers, they have the impact when they buy something. I mean about the suppliers. So we can use the criteria, environmental and social criteria. There are a lot of information, more and more information about ethical and unethical suppliers. So if you see the list, you can check. Even there are, the list for more and less human rights oriented producers of electric vehicles. So there are the data. The availability of data is improving. So if you choose the partner, the person that you are going to work with, it's simpler to find the right person or the right company, and this is about the suppliers.
I'm a producer, I'm hire a director, I hire script writer, I'm hire the cast and the crew. So there are separate.
Yes. So okay. So for the crew, I know that the trade unions for artists are getting stronger, because they've noticed that there were a lot of different imbalances. So they discovered that it's not fair to work over 12 hours and to have very short break, to work in a very poor conditions, sometimes even unsafe conditions, and the limits are broken, I would say, and we know that people are ready to report about the cases, and this is the first stage. So if we give the space for reporting, then we will get more and more information.
You are work at yourself, you are taking the contracts and fulfilling it. You are responsible toward the people who are contracting you. So you are not an employee. So you do not have a covering from the trade unions, yes?
Yes, but you can just establish as freelancers. You can do this. Even people in, if I remember, Pyszne.pl or different types of gig economy works, they decided to establish trade unions because they feel that something is wrong with the behaviors that are affected by the employees, the market, I would say, as the whole. So there are some solutions. So it's the first step, just to be aware of the problems. And I'm sure that people who are in audiovisual or creative industry, they are aware that something is wrong, and then they have to take the next step. The next step is something that we can establish as a guidelines or as the code of conduct, that we agree as an industry that we will follow some rules. So this is the question for you: if you are ready and if you are so mature to write this code, this common code of conduct for everybody to follow. So even if you are single as on the market, I think that not employee, but the person who will agree for some kind of contract. So are you ready to stop some kind of behaviors? Are you ready to neglect the agreement, or to say that this agreement is written in an improper way? Otherwise, I think that we are staying in the position that we are complaining, but nothing will change. Sorry for this pessimistic, but it depends on us.
But sometimes people feel pushed, yes, because they will not get paid if they do not fulfill the work. The work is escalating, and they do not have any space to have freedom. Yeah. because they will not get paid as they are freelancers and issue invoices. Yes, or yeah.
So
But thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, but so our creative industries needs, you know, more discussion in each of the topic, as we see that we need to spend more time and more be more precisely engaged in so many points of view as you shared today. So we need to finish. Sorry. I hope that we will meet once again with our speakers and our guests. If you will have any question, I think that in your presentation, or if not, we might, maybe if you agree, share your emails if anyone wants to send a question directly for you. Maybe it would be good solution, Goran. Yes, because
Yeah, I
we don't
believe
have.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
unfortunately, we ran out of time, and there are so many topics to be discussed way further than we actually had even for the whole session. So, as Malgosia said, if you're okay with this, we could share emails so the people could pose question. If you, I mean, Arthur already sent his LinkedIn profile, but yeah, for the two of you, if you agree, we can do this.
I would like to apologize for making it too long. I was not aware that I was speaking too long, especially Agata Rudnicka. I'm sorry that I took so much time. So
No
Okay,
problem.
yeah.
yeah, but the topics are important and it's very hard to, you know, to cut them so much.
yeah, but
So
I shouldn't anyway. Sorry.
Okay.
okay, but thank you, Agata, Jacek, Artur, for your interesting, inspiring presentation, and thank you all of you that you were with us today. Thanks, Goran, again for your co-moderating, and have a great evening for everyone. Thank you.
Yeah.
See you.
See you soon again
Yes, see
at
you
the next
soon.
session.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So much.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.